that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5, North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Glad to be with you once again. And we're going to start with something that really should never get old. And it's the primary thing that we should always be keeping in mind regarding this presidency or any presidency.
Stay focused. Talk about things that matter to people. It's the economy, stupid.
It's the economy. So what's going on with the economy? We've now been a little bit more than a year and 3 or 4 months under Trump. Where are we standing now? Well, let's start with growth. For the first quarter of 2018, GDP growth came in at an annualized rate of 2.3%. Now, I know what people are saying. Trump said we're going to get to 3%. And for 2 quarters, we actually did hit 3%. We had 3%, 3.1, 3.2, 2.9, and then in this most recent quarter, 2.3. Well, see, he's not doing what he said. Well, the expectations were for only 2% growth. 2%. So the Trump economy in the first quarter 2018 was 15% better than expected. And for the first full year of Trump, which would be from the end of the first quarter last year, so not counting the first quarter of 2017, because Barack Obama was still president for most of that, for a significant portion of that month, that quarter. But just saying when Trump was president, from the second quarter of 2017 to the end of the first quarter of 2018, GDP growth was better than 2.8%. Well, that's still not 3%, granted. However, the average annual GDP under Obama for 8 years was 1.5%. 1.5% during the Obama administration. There are some estimates that would give you a little bit of a bump, maybe as high as 1.8. Either way, GDP growth under Trump in a year is almost double what you got from Obama. I would say that the U.S. economy is moving in a positive direction not that long after Barack Obama left the White House. At least it sounds that way to me. Let's talk about jobs. Unemployment, as you know, is at an historic low, recently reported 3.9%. That's low. And of course, the progressives are out in force stating all the things that we should remember about Obama. This started under Obama, and Obama's responsible. Of course, when they say that, they can't name one policy that Obama ever enacted that was positive for unemployment. Not one. He didn't rein in taxation. He increased regulations. Both of those things, increased taxation and higher regulations, are not something that adds jobs in an economy. And there is still the fact that you had nearly 100 million people not working in the Obama economy. We're talking about the combination of those who were unemployed and those who had simply stopped looking for work. They just weren't even part of the economy. They weren't even part of the workforce. Had 100 million people. Well, that's not even possible. Yes, it is. And if you go back and take a look, you'll find out. Nearly 100, it was more than 95 million. And at some point, estimates had it eclipse 100 million. You never had during the Obama administration announcement after announcement from major corporations that they were going to begin hiring. That never happened, to my recollection, at any time during the Obama administration. As Trump was coming in the door, you had companies lining up, almost talking about how they were going to actually invest more, set up more jobs here in America, maybe bring jobs from someplace else so they could do them here in America. The naysayers, as they will do, well, so-and-so laid off some people. In every economy, no matter how vibrant or no matter how bad, you're going to have jobs that come and jobs that go. But to say that people are really losing their jobs when there's an unemployment rate of 3.9%, I don't think so. You're not losing jobs under the Trump economy as a whole. You can't. Also, in addition to this, depending upon who you talk to, and when I say who you talk to, it's whether or not you talk to the federal government, meaning the Bureau of Labor Standards, or ADP, which simply tracks the job creation in the private sector, and BLS will simply add in what's happening in the public sector jobs. 2.7 million jobs created, according to the BLS, since January, not in January 2000, since January 2017. So February 2017 through April of this year, 2.7 million jobs created. If you look at ADP, which just measures the private sector, it's 3.2 million jobs created since January of 2017. You get the inevitable criticism, well, they're cheap jobs. You're not really getting anything out of these jobs. No one's really getting paid. Really? Is that the statement that's being made? Marketplace.org, article from February of this year. The title of that article, if I remember it correctly, is "Here is the Truth About Wages That You Won't Hear from Trump." They were trying to run Trump down, of course. That's what the media does. Here's a paragraph from that. Average hourly earnings are up 2.9% from this time last year, while wages and salaries in the private sector are up 2.8%, according to the Department of Labor. They want to go on and say, well, it really should be 3 to 4% in order for low-income Americans to actually feel the impact. When did you ever see 2.9% growth under Obama? When did you see when did you see even 1% wage growth under Obama? So wages are going up and unemployment is at an historic low. So for everybody who wants to tell me how the jobs during Trump's economy are low-paying jobs, and I don't know why you want those jobs. How does that even make sense? If unemployment is down and wages are up, how am I getting bad jobs out of this economy? Doesn't make sense. But that's what they want you to believe. I'm not going to talk about the stock market because it still doesn't matter. The stock market went raging throughout the Obama administration, and guess what? People were still unemployed, and you still had growth on average that was less than 2 percentage points per year. So who cares? You weren't feeling that unless you were in the top 100th of 1%. You weren't getting that big bang out of the stock market, or unless you were retiring and cashing in a 401k or some type of plan. You weren't getting that. The average American, working American, wasn't getting anything out of the stock market. Now the stock market is declining somewhat. It's going up and down because of the structural changes that are happening in the economy due to the Trump administration. You're seeing some retreat. It didn't matter under under Obama's economy. It still doesn't matter now. But consumer confidence does. Consumer confidence does matter. CNBC put out an article on March 27th. Consumer confidence hits 127.7 in March versus an expectation of 131. Again, trying to ding Trump. It's not really that good. Oh, okay. However, if you read the article, consumer confidence fell in March after hitting an 18-year high in February. And here's a quote from the Conference's Board of Directors of Economic Indicators. Despite the modest retreat in confidence, index levels remain historically high and suggest further strong growth in the months ahead. So the stock market may not be doing all that well compared to what we have seen and have become accustomed to, but consumer confidence is going well. So here's the fact. Trump's economic policies, including canceling regulations that were in place during the Obama administration, reduced taxation. We have had a tax cut. It wasn't what we should have had, but it was a cut, particularly for business, and that matters more than you think. That has begun to revitalize the economy and put people back to work. Here's what we should be hearing as a result of what Donald Trump has done for the U.S. economy. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. We really appreciate what you're doing for us, Mr. President. At least I appreciate what the president is doing. That should be coming out of every media outlet. That should be coming out of every financial program. Instead, this is what we're hearing from mainstream media about the U.S. economy. Donald Trump is blowing the doors off the economy compared to his predecessor. And they don't want to talk about that because as soon as you understand that the economy is booming, if people get that in their minds, and booming is a relative term, when they recognize how much better it is than it was under Obama, the re-election of Donald Trump almost becomes a foregone conclusion. And the same people who are trying to wear vagina caps and hold impeachment votes now really don't want to deal with that prospect. But unless something happens bad, they're going to have to deal with the fact that Donald Trump has made the economy better, which means Democrats don't have much of a shot in 2020. And for that matter, why would you want to change horses in 2018 and bring Democrats back in? Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com. And WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Progressives are flexing their muscle against the American electorate, through teachers' unions. What do I mean by that? We have strikes, teacher strikes going on in multiple states, and these are statewide strikes. West Virginia, Oklahoma, Arizona, Colorado, Kentucky, more are on the way, by the way. So they're continuing to use children as human shields. That's what they do best, in case, for those who did not know. They use children as human shields for multiple purposes. Let's first talk about Bloomberg issued a report back on the 2nd of April talking about strikes in a couple of states.
Thousands of public school teachers in Kentucky and Oklahoma walked off the job on Monday. They rallied in Frankfort and Oklahoma City, demanding more funding for education and better pay.
We're not an afterthought. We are not something that you can put at the bottom of the bucket. We're not something that you can put lobbyists over. We are the future. I mean, our students are the future, and they need to fund our future.
It means that we are all focused on the same goal, which is funding and supporting public education, which is a public institution. It is for everyone. It's part of our democracy. It's part of being an American.
It comes 1 month after teachers in West Virginia ended their strike with a deal to raise their pay by 5%.
So the teachers are saying we are the future. We can't be put up at the bottom of the barrel. We. And, oh, by the way, they threw in a kid reference at the end. Oh, well, we are the future. You can't put lobbyists over us. You can't put other people over us. We are. Oh, yeah. Well, our kids are the future. Are you getting this? This is not about the children. It's never been about the children. You don't sit there and stop teaching children for 9 days because you care about them. Well, I can't teach you unless I get 5% more money. I love you, but I'm gonna make you sit down and take it, and I'm gonna blame somebody else for my inactivity. I'm going to make somebody else responsible for my inattention to you. Where else do you get away with that? When's the last time we had a statewide police strike or a firefighter strike? I don't know that really goes on too much, but that's a different story. You really need to understand what's going on with this and how this is not about kids. It never really has been about kids. They simply mention your kids to keep you from thinking the truth about them. Here's what Fortune magazine put back out on, I think it was the 20th of April, regarding the strike in Oklahoma.
I'm a first-year teacher, and even though I am a first-year teacher, I really want the best for my kids. I mean, I put money and time into what I do, and by golly, I want my kids to be taken care of.
It's getting increasingly harder for us to meet the individual needs of each one of our students. That's something that's incredibly important to us and absolutely tied to the funding we're asking for.
Well, we're asking Secretary DeVos to come to Oklahoma, see how badly needed funding is for our classrooms. We're doing this for the kids today. It's not about us. It's about the kids, funding our classrooms, getting adequate textbooks, getting qualified, highly qualified teachers in the classroom, and the resources that enable us to do our job more effectively.
It's not about the teacher pay raises. We're not being greedy. What we're fighting for is our kids. That's why we're here. We're that voice for those kids. They deserve better.
I agree. The American children deserve better. They deserve better than unionized teachers. It's really that simple. Because unionized teachers will throw them under the bus if they don't get the type of treatment that they think they deserve. And they will always couch it in terms where they are hiding behind children. That is what they do. They hide behind children. In Arizona, this was, to me, extremely interesting, because that's one that is, well, if it's not here already, it's coming very, very soon. Fortune.com put out a story on the 20th of April, what to know about the latest statewide teacher strike, and they were talking about the one in Arizona. Here are the demands. In addition to a pay raise, first you got to have a pay raise to stop the walkout. They have a number of demands, including, well, you have to restore education funding back to the 2008 levels. Well, what about the rest of government? Because we don't have the money to put everybody back at 2008. We don't care about the rest of government. You got to put education funding back at 2008 levels. Plus, give us a pay raise. Competitive pay for all education support staff. These are not the teachers. So we need a raise. They need competitive pay, and you need to put the education funding back to 2008 levels. We also need a permanent salary structure, including annual raises. You need to guarantee that we make more money every year, whether or not more money is coming in. And if that's not the case, we're not getting more money. You just need to tax the people more. You know how we roll. You know how we do this. Oh, here's the next one. No new tax cuts until per pupil funding reaches the national average. In short, the entire state government in Arizona is to be run by the teachers union. You are simply state legislature, state senate, governor. You are simply a pass-through mechanism to make sure that money from taxpayers goes directly from their wallet into our coffers. Period. You don't understand that this is what's going on? I don't know why you don't understand it. They're crying about pay. You do realize that the United States pays its teachers better than all but 4 countries in the world. Better than all but 4. And the 4 countries who get paid better: Luxembourg, Ireland, Korea, and Germany. Those are the nations that are paying their teachers better. But guess what? For all that money, the United States ranks 20th in educational results. Let's talk about who they follow behind. Finland's number 1, Japan, South Korea, Denmark, Russia. We are 15 places behind Russia. Norway, the UK, Israel. By the way, when we talk about Israel doesn't pay their teachers very well at all. They don't. Major complaints, but they get results. Sweden, Hong Kong, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany. You know what? An interesting absence in the top 20 is Luxembourg, who pays their teachers more than anyone else. Another one that's absent, I'm looking. I don't see Ireland in the top 20. They pay their teachers better than the United States. Here's my point. There is no correlation between teacher pay and educational outcome. There's more to it than that. Much more to it than that. But here is what's happening. Teachers' unions represent the only place in American society anymore where progressives have unchallenged power and unfettered authority. Progressives run the schools. And don't get me wrong, this isn't about going after Trump. This is like every other thing that does go after Trump. This is about taking dead aim at the American people. You will continue to fund us. You don't have to agree with us, but you will continue to give us your money. And you're doing that because we are the ones who are educating your children, even though we suck at it. That's what you're getting from these people. Let me tell you what you need to do. You need to actually take all this talk you have about technology and put it in education and start getting rid of people. You need to start delivering educational content through the internet. It's not hard to do. It's doable. The only problem with it is if you do it correctly, you're going to take a whole lot of educational support staff and make them irrelevant. You're going to take a whole number of teachers and get rid of them, and all of a sudden you have fewer things. You want to really fix this? You go to every state and say you do not have to be part of a union in order to teach in our schools. You simply have to meet state standards. The legislature sets that standard. We may or may not consult with the National Teachers Union, but we know how to set standards. And we will pay you in accordance with you meeting those standards and demonstrating results. We could come up with a construct for that. But no, we're not going to sit up here and say that education dictates how we're going to run the state budget. Go out and look and see in how many states education is the top go-getter, the top funding in how many states? Top funding item, education. Well, it's the most important thing. No, it's not. And if it really were, how come we're not demanding great results? Because we don't get good results. We get terrible results in Maryland. We get terrible results. We had a cheating scandal in Atlanta. We got terrible results. We had people stealing Chicago blind. We have all kinds of nonsense going on in Los Angeles. Name it. Detroit, a school. Is there even a school system in Detroit? You're not getting what you're paying for. They're simply putting your children up in front of you like puppies at the adoption center and saying, you don't want anything bad to happen to him, do you? And they're ignoring the fact that something terrible already is happening. They are in the clutches of those who intend to indoctrinate them against your interest and against their well-being, and to do so on your dime. These walkouts are designed to flex the muscle of progressives, increase their stranglehold on the wallets of taxpayers, and blunt the move of the American people back toward greatness and away from progressivism. If you want to stop it, you can, but you're going to have to vote people into your legislature who understand the con game that the teachers' unions are running and are willing to call their bluff to the point of radically revamping education in your state so that no one group of people can hold your children's future hostage. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. There is continuing pressure being put on abortion, and I could not be more pleased. For example, in 2015, the Alan Guttmacher Institute, which is the research arm for Planned Parenthood, recorded that 15 states had enacted 26 new abortion restrictions in the prior year. That's 15 states doing that in 1 year. In 2016, Washington Post reported that 14 states passed laws in that year making abortion harder to come by, and that 17 states banned abortion after 20 weeks. More recently, Mississippi and Kentucky have made abortion less welcome in their states. Louisiana is considering signing, the governor of Louisiana, that is, said he would likely sign legislation that looked similar to Mississippi's, and Mississippi bans abortion after 15 weeks. And there is no consideration given for rape and incest. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that stuff. We're like, the baby should live. Oh, well, not trying to hear that. And most recently, Iowa is entering the fray, and I forgot to mention that Ohio is actually considering putting an outright ban on abortion within the state. If you get pregnant here and you try to have an abortion, we're coming for you. Well, they're just going to go to other states. If you haven't paid attention, you're already topping 20 states that are cracking down on abortion. This is a direct result of the progressive pushback, or the pushback against progressives, that began almost the day after Barack Obama was inaugurated in 2009. This is what happens when you as the Democrat Party lose 1,000 elected seats at the state and federal level. This is what happens. What happens is you actually find out what the electorate thinks about infanticide. And Iowa is just now passing the most restrictive legislation against abortion in this country. By the way, South Carolina, who did this back in 2016, that was a woman who signed that into law. And the governor of Iowa, the current governor of Iowa, is also a woman. So I know all the My Buddy and My Body, My Choice folks are out there just having a conniption. How could a woman do this to other women? Have y'all not figured this out? This ain't about women, because women aren't the ones dying. It's about children, and therefore it's about families, because abortion destroys both. And maybe it's a good idea to get away from that. I recently posted it's really a compilation of conversations I've had with people and those who wonder why I take such a strong stand against abortion. So why do you say so much about abortion or against it? My answer is simple: because being conceived is not a capital crime. And allowing irresponsible females to kill the next generation without consequence, that shouldn't be allowed. Because think about the craziness here. The woman can kill the child in her womb, but if anybody else causes her to have a miscarriage, particularly on purpose, they're somehow liable. If it's not a baby, if it's not a human being, then it doesn't matter who causes it not to reach term. No one should be charged, but that's not the way we think. The hypocrisy is ridiculous. For some reason, let me ask you guys this. How is it that you have no problem with a woman killing a child that has done nothing to her, but at the same time you have a problem with a police officer busting a cap in somebody who is threatening to him? Well, he shouldn't feel threatened. So let me get this straight. The cop shouldn't feel threatened by the black guy who's running from him, giving him attitude, and then points something at him that we don't know what it is, but he shouldn't feel threatened if the cop and the cop shoots him and the cop's bad. What did the baby do to the woman? What did he do? Is he posing a threat to her? Did her doctor say that she's going to, fall apart and die if she carries a kid to term? Let me help you guys out with this. Out of 100 abortions in this country, 1% of them happened because the woman was raped or the victim of incest. So tell me why you're killing those other 99 babies. Tell me. And tell me what's the difference with that and a police officer feeling his life might be threatened. Well, he shouldn't feel that way. Well, we know the woman's life isn't threatened because the mother's health is like 0.5% of all abortions in America. That's not why women are killing children. Women are killing children in America because it's one of their contraceptive backups. You do know that in New York City, for example, you have more black children being aborted than being born alive. What's that about? But it's her body. She should be the one deciding whether or not she's going to have an abortion. It's not her body. The baby has a body. That body belongs to the kid. It doesn't belong to the woman. So there's no reason for her to have the unilateral authority to destroy that body. For those of you who don't know how a lot of abortions occur, the child is simply dismembered while alive in the womb and pulled from the womb piece by piece. No one should have the right to do that to another human being. But what if she's raped? Should she have to keep it if she's raped? It is a human being. And if, in case you forgot, when the woman is raped, a child does not even exist. Please explain to me why you're going to punish the one person who wasn't even around at the time of the incident, and instead of taking this out on the rapist, you want the child to die? And the child says, I wasn't even there. I was not there. I did not exist. How could I have anything to do with this? But of course this could be very traumatic for the woman if she has to carry the baby to term. It could scar her for life. If you're scarred from rape, whether or not we execute the child, that's not going to get rid of the scars. What about the reminders? Let me help you out with your trauma, your emotional trauma. We got all kinds of treatment, all kinds of therapy. If you want to, you can go on Prozac and deal with your stuff. Please explain to me what the recourse is for the child that is ripped apart in the womb. I guarantee you his trauma is worse than yours. And then, of course, there's incest. Well, we shouldn't let incest go unchallenged, right? We can't let that happen. Okay? And the child committed what crime? Because the child didn't exist when the incest occurred. Well, incest means you're going to have birth defects. We don't have birth defects with children when incest is not involved. Is that what you're trying to tell me? Let me help you out with this. See, God is the one who gives conception, and nothing is a surprise to God. He gives conception to whom he chooses. He withholds it from them whom he chooses. Let's think about giving God the benefit of the doubt, saying he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's under no obligation to make what he does comfortable for you. If you want to have your discussion with God, and you will, about the children that you're killing, trust me, you're going to get an opportunity. Know that. And then, of course, when you say that, people say, well, you don't believe that women have reproductive rights. No, I believe women have reproductive responsibilities. They have responsibilities. Part of her physical makeup. Also her emotional makeup. Her mental makeup deals with her reproductive responsibilities. But what about her right to have a child when she wants it? Well, then she has the right to keep her pants up, panties up, skirts and dresses down, keep her knees close together to ensure that she doesn't get pregnant. At least not at a time that she wouldn't choose. She also has the right, and has had it for decades, to use contraception. But of course, when you use contraception, you're rolling the dice. It's effective 99% of the time. Okay. Whole lot of 1% babies out there, just in case you didn't know. But if you want to roll the dice like that, you have the right to do that. But why in the world do you have the right to kill anyone? And no one's able to address that. Because the reason is because people actually think women are more important than children. It's the most ludicrous thing I can imagine for any culture that wants to survive, for any society that wants to have a future. You would never consider women more important than children. Women have an importance to the future because of the children they bear. They have no other connection to the future other than the children that they bear. Because everybody dies. Well, what about the man? Well, what about his responsibility? Let me help you out. If a woman took care of her reproductive responsibilities, then the man's reproductive responsibilities would be addressed per force. Because men don't get pregnant. And you want me to put it all on men? I got a deal for you. When I see men walking in to abortion clinics, walking like a duck, belly hanging out all over the place because they're pregnant, and then when I see men walking out of abortion clinics with their abdomens flatter than when they came in, and I see bodies stacking up in dumpsters of babies that were aborted, when that happens because men are going to abortion clinics, I'll put all of this on men. They have no prerogative here. Well, he could be pressuring her. Really? Really? I thought you guys were equals now. We're all about the strong woman now. Come on with this nonsense. It's not anybody's business but the woman and her doctor. It's a homicide. It's everybody's business. You don't go killing people in a corner and then say, well, y'all didn't have to know nothing about it. Really? Every homicide deserves for there to be an accounting for the life lost. And then you get to those stupid arguments. Well, it's just a fetus. It isn't a baby. Fetus is Latin for baby. Unborn child. That's exactly what fetus means. So you want to basically take out this linguistic ignorance of yours and use it as a shield for homicide to protect you from the repercussions thereof. And as a society, we're letting that occur, by the way. I just thought you might want to know. Let me help you out with something. When you kill people in the womb, you have ceased to be a moral nation, and it is not a recoverable error. It has to stop. You can't recover from your immorality as long as you allow that practice to continue. You can't. There's another one that's just as bad, and that's same-sex marriage. You cannot let homosexuality and abortion run rampant in your society and in any way, shape, or form have a lasting claim on morality that can move your society forward. You have a twin, grievous, mortal wound to the very conscience and foundation of your society that cannot be repaired until you fix those things. I'm happy to note that we have about 20 states or more that are on their way to forcing a fix. Now, the progressives and the progressive women and the vagina cap wearers and everything else, they will kick and scream. Do not care. Take them down, take them out, move on. Just move on past them. You cannot have a great society. You cannot have a great people. Hear me, black people. You can't go around being the leading practitioners of abortion and actually think that you're a community. You're not. And the American nation is right behind you. You do not have a great country. You cannot be a great country if you are killing people in the womb. That is an incurable moral error. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, this is actually the final segment of the first hour, and the only thing I can think of to call this segment is resist the RINO and he will flee. Some may recall about a week ago, back on the 26th, I believe, of April, this occurred.
House Speaker Paul Ryan has prompted anger from both Democrats and Republicans after forcing the House chaplain to quit. A letter written by Reverend Patrick Conroy, dated April 15th, says, "As you have requested, I hereby offer my resignation as the 60th chaplain of the United States House of Representatives," according to NBC News. The chaplain's role is to open House sessions with a prayer and offer spiritual counsel to members of the House. Conroy seems to have been well liked, leaving lawmakers to wonder what happened. Republican Representative Frank Lobiondo said, "I have gotten to know him pretty well, and I didn't understand it," while Democratic Representative Joe Crowley said Conroy's ouster was, quote, "just outrageous." Ryan has not given a reason for firing Conroy, but the chaplain has expressed skepticism about some GOP legislation. Before the tax bill was signed, Conroy said, "May all members be mindful that the institutions and structures of our great nation guarantee the opportunities that have allowed some to achieve great success, while others continue to struggle. It's notable because critics say the tax bill is favorable toward wealthy Americans."
Maybe some of you do not recall that Paul Ryan considered the tax reform bill, which did not go anywhere near cutting personal income taxes enough. I'm not going to say it's a bad bill. It does do some good. It's going to help the economy achieve better and stronger growth. All that's going to happen. But you missed the opportunity to take the rates down to where, closer to where they should have been. You missed that opportunity. And that's a shame. But that for him was a crowning achievement, and to have a chaplain not necessarily speak in the same glowing terms about it that he would, that's going to cause a problem for the speaker. Now, he is going to say, or he has said, that it wasn't about the prayer, it wasn't about, well, the truth of the matter is, at the time of the firing, as you heard, he didn't really say what it was about. It caught people by surprise, and the next thing you know, a well-liked cleric has been removed. Here's what you really don't understand. Maybe you don't understand. When elected officials feel no regard or respect for those who make the effort to represent God, and I'm not Catholic, I'm not even a fan of Catholicism, but I'm not going to question this man's commitment to his faith as he understands it, and that he is trying to serve God. When elected officials presume to disrespect such people, that lets you know that your society is out of whack. The problem we have is that elected officials have presumed that quite often, citing, well, there's a separation of church and state, and, people who represent God shouldn't really say anything in public affairs, when those who are in public affairs do their best to remove God from everything that is done publicly, privately, or anywhere in society. People say you cannot legislate morality, but you definitely can legislate against God. To come up with the idea that killing someone in the womb, I know I'm going back to abortion, it's going to make somebody mad, to legislate that is something that can be done without any consequence, well, that's legislating against God. To say that the church shouldn't have any say in this is a matter for secular people. Really? If God is not supreme, then of course we have a problem. When politicians treat those who are ordained to serve God as though they are hired hands, that's going to let you know that there's a problem in your society. If you haven't figured that out yet, I'm here to help you. Fortunately, in the minds of some and a problem for others, the good house chaplain, after offering his resignation, thought about it and decided maybe that wasn't the best thing to do.
The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Father Pat Conroy, the Catholic House chaplain, rescinding his resignation tonight in a scathing 2-page letter to House Speaker Paul Ryan, who demanded just weeks ago Conroy step aside.
The story's not over.
Father Conroy writes Ryan's chief of staff demanded his resignation in an April 13th meeting, saying he, quote, mentioned dismissively something like, maybe it's time we had a chaplain that wasn't a Catholic. Father Conroy also citing this prayer.
Let us pray.
On tax reform late last year as a reason he was asked to step down.
Their efforts these days guarantee that there are not winners and losers under new tax laws, but benefits balanced and shared by all.
After receiving the letter, Speaker Ryan, himself a devout Catholic, deciding to let Conroy stay. In a statement tonight, the Speaker again insisting Conroy's firing was about, quote, pastoral services and had nothing to do with politics.
It was about pastoral services. And a number of our members felt like the pastoral services were not being adequately served or offered.
Conroy's dismissal angered Catholics in both parties.
When there's so much turmoil in the country and everything else, they're actually firing the House chaplain midterm, which is just outrageous.
About Conroy's case, I see no evidence why he should be removed, and it's such an unprecedented action. To me, it would only be taken if they're very, very serious issues.
Ryan's chief of staff saying tonight that he strongly disagrees with Father Conroy's characterization of their meeting. Speaker Ryan says he'll meet with the House chaplain next week to clear the air.
The air is actually quite clear right now. Here's what you had. The expectation that a Speaker of the House believes he is more important than a man who represents God, and that he can tell him to come and go as the Speaker of the House pleases. Well, it's okay for you to be here. Well, maybe we need somebody else. And to treat the man who chooses to represent God as his profession as an errand boy, as a hireling. That is problematic. And now what we have in this country is the expectation that those who claim any relationship with God should bow down before all the secular powers that exist in this country. How dare you speak against this? You can't bring God into the conversation. You can't do this. You should not be saying these things. You can't judge. You can't do... Really? And of course, all those people also cite the Bible. Well, you're not supposed to judge. The Bible says don't judge. Really? And if somebody wrongs you, you're not supposed to strike back or speak out. You're supposed to just turn the other cheek and keep going. Let me help you. The same Bible that admonishes the faithful to turn the other cheek also teaches them to resist the devil and he will flee. Oh, Father Pat Conroy resisted the speaker and the speaker backed down. Personally, I think it's refreshing to find someone who has a relationship with God, demonstrating a greater interest in adhering to that other part of the counsel of God, not just what makes their adversaries comfortable. Because there comes a time when you just need to stop playing nice with progressives. And this Catholic priest apparently, he got that email. Now, the problem I have is that we don't have a whole lot of black clergy who seem to have gotten their email. That email, they seem to have used Mrs. Clinton's BleachBit device as their server for incoming messages, and therefore it got lost because they won't stand up to progressives. They continue to allow progressives to silence them effectively and totally when it comes to things of conscience, things of character, and the things of God. If that doesn't stop, somebody will stand up for God, but if there aren't going to be any black people standing up for God, it's just going to be another nail in their coffin, of irrelevance. And with that, I'll turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that, we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
Either the United States is a sovereign nation or it is not. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, recently America's northern neighbor Canada announced their merit-based immigration policy. The Maple Leaf Nation has come to grips about the foolishness of letting in large numbers of individuals into Canada who are on a self-appointed mission to fundamentally change Canada and Western society in general into a woman-abusing, Christian-hating society of sadistic cruelty and sadness. In Europe, Poland and Hungary have wisely refused to allow their nations to be overrun by many pretending to need asylum from oppression, but have done nothing but wreak havoc by raping women, knifing others, and just being nasty litter bugs. So now, the United States finally has a president who respects our national sovereignty and is not allowing the caravan of wannabe illegal border crossers to simply stroll in and do whatever the heck they want. But the reaction from American-born leftists and others around the world reveals blatant hypocrisy. They have labeled our president and the rest of us who simply want legal merit-based immigration as bigots and nationalists. Well, so be it. America is a sovereign nation, and it is high time we start acting like it. I'm Ron Edwards.
Blowing away the myths and revealing the truth. You can continue to blow away the myths with Ron Edwards on Facebook, Twitter, and theronedwards.com. Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin on the dominant force of Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5, North Florida Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. What I want to talk about now is one of the primary issues with the so-called black community, and I call it so-called because they don't act like a community. They're just a bunch of reactionary, feral people from a political standpoint. And it's so easy. They have been so well trained to celebrate nothing. Nothing will make them happy when they feel violated. Let me give you the latest example in my particular view. You may recover the April trespassing in Starbucks.
It's the viral video Starbucks hopes will not define the coffee giant.
What did they do?
Today, the company announced that all of its 8,000 U.S. stores will close the afternoon of May 29th. Employees will go through racial bias training.
Think of it as a teachable moment, an opportunity to take something and learn from it and fix it.
According to Philadelphia police, the two men who were waiting for a friend wanted to use the Starbucks bathroom without buying anything, against store policy. The manager called 911.
I have two gentlemen at my cafe that are refusing to make a purchase or leave.
The police called for backup.
So request from another unit along with a supervisor.
The police chief says the arrests were justified.
Where do we work? Yes!
But the incident triggered protests and a nationwide boycott campaign. In California, a black man said he shot this video at an LA Starbucks in January.
Is it my skin color? Is it my skin color?
Accusing Starbucks of letting a white customer use the bathroom without buying anything, but not letting him do the same thing. Starbucks has not commented on the incident, while its CEO personally flew to Philadelphia and apologized to the two men.
Do you think Starbucks is doing enough? Yes, I do. They acted very quickly. I think it's a huge opportunity for them to work with their employees to redefine the customer experience.
An afternoon without coffee, Starbucks hopes will restore any faith it has lost. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
So we had a trespassing in a Starbucks. It was a trespassing. The police were called. As far as the police were concerned, they're just there to investigate a trespassing. The law is pretty clear. The men were trespassing. They were arrested. Got it. The inevitable and predictable Negro blow-up. You had folks marching in the streets in Philadelphia. You had people talking about what this was and comparing it back to the darker days, all of that stuff. And you had the reaction from Starbucks. Now, notice how they did all this in Philly with the two guys who got arrested, including having the CEO fly there to personally apologize to the two men. But the guy in L.A. who shot a video and showed ostensibly the same thing, that was ignored. So when someone says, did Starbucks do enough, notice how Starbucks has already compartmentalized everything that happened. We're not going to deal with LA, we're just going to deal with Philly. If we deal with Philly, and then what we're going to do is say we're going to do a symbolic closing of all 8,000 stores, so that'll take care of LA as well. We're going to train everybody. Really? That's going to solve the problem. Do you even understand what the problem is? Well, that's a very good question. I don't think people really do understand what the problem is. However, back on the 2nd of May, CBS in Philly did announce that a settlement had been reached between the city of Philadelphia and the two trespassers. And there's also some information in it about the settlement that they have with Starbucks.
An update now on the story that sparked national outrage. Two black men arrested for sitting at a Rittenhouse Square Starbucks without ordering anything have settled with the city of Philadelphia. Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson will receive a symbolic $1 each. The settlement also calls for the city to set up a $200,000 program for young entrepreneurs. On April 12th, Nelson and Robinson were led away in handcuffs at the 18th and Spruce Starbucks after the manager called police. Starbucks and the men have also reached an agreement. In a joint statement, they say the agreement includes a confidential financial settlement. Robinson and Nelson will have an opportunity to provide input based on their personal experience to former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder as part of the company's long-term diversity and equity efforts. Robinson and Nelson have also been offered the opportunity to complete their undergraduate degrees through the Starbucks College Achievement Plan.
All right, let's break that down for a minute. Let's start with what happened with the city. The city's going to give the two guys $1 apiece. And they're going to put together a $200,000 grant for young entrepreneur programs in Philadelphia high schools. Hold on just a second. The grant's not exactly going to the high schools. It's going through a nonprofit organization. So how much of that is actually going to get to the schools? And after, of course, the school administration puts their hands on it, how much of that is actually going to get to the students? You do realize, or maybe you did not, of the more than 250,000 children in the Philadelphia school system, fewer than 35,000 are high schoolers. Let's do the math. If I have $200,000 and I have to spread that amongst 35,000 high schoolers, and I don't have the administrative overhead of a nonprofit and a school board, then these kids are going to get less than $6 a piece. What do you think is actually going to happen once you have a nonprofit get the $200,000 and they have to pay their people to put the grant in action and do? This is nothing. It's nothing. But it sounds good. Again, it's really easy to make the Negroes happy. You can give them nothing with a nice sounding title and name and fanfare, and then they go quietly back into their burrows until the next upset. Let's talk about the Starbucks settlement. An undisclosed amount of cash. Yeah, they got broke off, maybe. They'll be able to talk to Eric Holder about what he's going to put together as a curriculum for May 29th, when they shut all the stores down in the U.S. You actually think that that's going to affect what Eric Holder has already decided to do? Now, don't get me wrong. He's going to give them attribution. He's going to say, well, I spoke with the two trespassers from Philly. No, I'm not using their names, and I will not use their names. That's me talking, not Holder. Holder's going to give them attribution. I spoke with these two young men, and I have great understanding and empathy for their experience. You already know that that's what's going to happen, but let me help you out. The curriculum for this is already set. It was set before they were even arrested. If you don't believe that, I feel bad for you, because the progressive agenda doesn't get written in real time. The progressive agenda has always been waiting. Now, the other thing is they get to finish their undergrad studies through the Starbucks program that they have set up for employees. So these two have no college education. How valuable is that to them, since they had already decided to be entrepreneurs? And it doesn't say that they're going to do it, so they'll have the opportunity. They'll have the opportunity. Let me ask you a question. Does Starbucks pay fully for the education of their employees? I'm not saying they do or they don't. But it says they'll have the opportunity. Well, that's nice. They have the choice to do it or not. But if they were really getting broke off, with millions of dollars from Starbucks, who definitely has the money, why would they even want that? Or is that just a publicity stunt by Starbucks? At the end of the day, the best you can say is that these two trespassers, instead of getting arrested and getting tried and getting a conviction and paying a fine for trespassing, they got $1 each from the city, an undisclosed amount of money from Starbucks, and a chance to talk with Eric Holder. Please explain to me what that does for black people. And let's not forget the guy in L.A. got ignored. Nobody's thinking about him. He published his video and nobody cares. When LBJ said back in the early 1960s, we need to give these Negroes a little something, enough to make them quiet, but not enough to make a difference. That particular piece of progressive tenet rhetoric has become calcified in the movement as to being, this is how you deal with black people. They're going to get upset, they're going to rant, they're going to rave. They're like a dog with no teeth. They bark loud, but they really can't do anything. They won't do anything. So you throw something at them, not to deal with the fact that they have teeth, because they don't. You throw something at them so that you can get them to stop barking. And then you go on about your business until they start barking again, because they're never going to bite. Black people politically in this country have no bite anymore. They did it one time, now they don't. But have you noticed, since you heard about settlements and everything else, all quiet, actually since Starbucks talked about closing their stores for a day, an afternoon anyway, you have heard nothing. Now see, had they closed their stores in the morning, that would have meant more to me, because they have more traffic in the morning than they do in the afternoon. But that's another issue. Nothing can make the so-called black community feel as though they're heard and listened to. That's what they got from Philadelphia. That's what they're getting from Starbucks. And we'll be doing this again real soon. They tried the Waffle House. The Waffle House doesn't want to play that game, but that's a different story. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, Freedom in America Radio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Just to kind of tie up a loose end from the last segment, when I said, you know what, do you really understand what the problem is when you're dealing with that trespassing issue in a Starbucks with black people? The issue is black people have no social professionalism. That's it. And you cannot instill that in them by accommodating them when they cry. Well, we wouldn't have treated certain... It really doesn't matter. Trespassing is what was done. Social professionalism, when you're confronted with a situation like those two black men who are not college educated to the extent that that matters, when that's encountered, oh, your policy says I can't use the bathroom here unless I pay for something. Instead of arguing about whether or not they're going to enforce their policy with somebody else, buy a cup of coffee, buy a muffin. Or, okay, well, what if I just wait outside until my friend gets here, and then we'll all come in and we'll get something together? That's called social professionalism. There's no sense in causing a scene. Black people like to cause scenes. They do. For reasons that harken back to one thing only. They don't feel they're getting enough attention. On to the next topic. This whole Kanye thing is really getting out of hand. Kanye West has come out seemingly in favor of Donald Trump. This is an evolution for him. It hasn't happened overnight. You may recall that after saying back during Katrina that George W. Bush doesn't care about black people, he said that over live air. He made the remarkable step of quasi-apologizing to George Bush, also on live television, saying that, you know what, you don't always understand. He mealy-mouthed it, but he basically retracted the idea that George W. Bush didn't care about black people. And that actually meant something to George W. Bush. He was bent out of shape about that accusation or about that assertion for years. The point being, Kanye's movement away from the common negrosity is not altogether recent. He made the statement that everybody agreed with, the common Negroes agree with, back in the wake of Katrina. George W. Bush doesn't care about black people. Everybody said, yeah, Kanye woke. So when he walked it back, you should have seen that he was moving in a different direction. And now he's actually gone ahead and embraced, or, well, okay, let's call it an embrace of Donald Trump. And that has everybody bent out of shape, particularly his statements regarding slavery and choice. Slavery is a choice, he has said. And that has sent people just apoplectic. They are totally gone over this. He doesn't understand. I remember reading something on social media. My great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, let's go back and ask him whether or not he had a choice. And that's because people really don't understand much. And to be truthful, based on his history, Kanye West is probably not the best spokesman with respect to slavery, freedom, and liberty. He just isn't. But the truth of the matter, he is saying something that has been the case, that has been almost bedrock American doctrine from before the founding of the country. If you're going to say that slavery is not a choice, then what do you say to Patrick Henry, who said, "Give me liberty or give me death"? What do you say to that? Is that not a choice? I will not live as a slave. I would rather die than live as a slave. What do you do with all the woke folks who cheered the character in Black Panther who said, "Bury me in the ocean with my ancestors who jumped from the ships rather than submit to slavery," or words to that effect? What's the difference between that and saying slavery is a choice? What's the difference between that and saying, "Give me liberty or give me death"? Nothing. At all. So why is Kanye so offensive to you? Is he just the wrong spokesman? Do you not like the fact that he married Kim Kardashian? What is your issue with what he's saying? Because when you paid whatever the going amount of a movie ticket is, $15, whatever it is, to sit there and have somebody slide that one in during Black Panther, I didn't hear all the blowback. I didn't hear the blowback. Because if it was a choice when they were on the boat, it was also a choice when they reached the North American continent. Even though of the 12 million that were evacuated from Africa as slaves, only 400,000, less than 400,000 reached North America. Most of them went to South America, the South American continent, and also the Caribbean. Nevertheless, why are you paying so much attention to what Kanye West has said? Why are you not comparing that to simple American historical truth in its creed. What about Harriet Tubman? Since we're talking about black folks, Harriet Tubman's a big hero to black folks. She said, I had reasoned it in my mind that I had a right to liberty or death. I'm paraphrasing here. If I could not have one, I would have the other. Is that not the same thing as saying slavery is a choice? She's the same woman that said, I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if they had realized they were slaves. She's talking about choice. I came to free you. Do you want to go? She found 1,000 that said yes. She found 1,000 more that said, that's all right. I'm good. All slavery is a choice. You cannot make a slave of anyone against their will. Can you subject them to oppression? You can do anything you want to someone's body. You can do anything you want to someone's property. But enslave them? To have them willingly submit, because if you're not submitted, you're not a slave. I'm sorry. But most of those who were enslaved in the old Confederacy, they weren't all chained. They could have walked off the plantation and headed north anytime they wanted to. They could have. And if you're saying, well, that's not true, then what's the deal with the Underground Railroad? Well, you had to be secretive. I didn't say it. I didn't say escaping a system of slavery that was in place in the Confederacy was going to be easy, but you had the opportunity to do it, and you had folks like Harriet Tubman, who was a conductor for the train. The simple issue is a surprisingly large number of people are comfortable in slavery. And it's not just then, it's also now. A surprising number of black people are comfortable in their political irrelevance. And they think that ranting and raving at white people or about white people somehow makes them more important. They think that voting makes them more important. Really? Please explain to me how voting's doing anything for you. Black folks voted Detroit, Michigan into bankruptcy. Black folks voted Flint, Michigan into poisoned water. Black folks voted Baltimore, Maryland into the heroin capital of the United States. Black folks voted Atlanta, Georgia into the black HIV capital of the world. Please explain to me again what voting has done for you. It has basically become a trustee of the plantation. One of the things that was given to you, which was a little something to make you quiet, but not enough to make a difference. When in fact it has made a rather large difference, it's actually hurt black people because they haven't combined voting with the value system that makes political power worth wielding. So they still choose to be slaves. Slaves with a vote are still slaves. Because what are you voting for? What are you accomplishing with your vote? Look at all the places where black people have a plurality of the population or a majority of the population. Baltimore, where you have the heroin capital of the United States. Look at all the places. New Orleans, Louisiana, St. Louis, which is a killing field. Look at all these places and tell me what blacks have accomplished with their vote. And it's almost impossible for them to accomplish anything for a very simple reason. When you don't take care of yourself, you cannot put forward a political agenda to move you in any direction that resembles forward. There's a death culture among black people, and voting will not overcome that. There is a godlessness going on among black people, which is unprecedented compared to where we as a people were 50 years ago and before that. And as a result, you can't correct that just by voting. And you've made a choice to listen to nothing other than what white progressives formulated back on the campuses of Berkeley when they were high as a kite back in the 60s. That is the origin of your ideology today, and you're stuck with it. Slavery is a choice. It's like poverty. Anybody can find themselves in poverty. Anybody can find themselves in slavery, but no one can keep you there against your will, without your consent. If you don't believe that, you don't have to. Stay enslaved. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force of Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. We have an event that seems to have flown under the radar, which is surprising given the racial attitude of media in this country at this time. We know that if a police officer shoots and kills, or in any way kills, a black person, particularly a black male, then we get almost wall-to-wall coverage of the white privilege and the supremacy, white supremacy arguments, even if the cops who do the killing aren't white, which is kind of often the case, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. The progressive movement has an ongoing campaign to discredit the law enforcement institutions in this country, and they have that in going on for a very simple reason. Their desire long term is to make the country ungovernable. If law enforcement is not respected, if law enforcement is not trusted, if law enforcement is not thought of in any way, shape, or form in a respectful fashion, then that makes the anarchy and chaos that they would like to sow in the country there in order to totally take it down and remake it in the image that they would prefer, well, that makes it easier. But I digress. 2 young black men in Oklahoma City were recently killed, and the people who are responsible for their deaths happen to be white. Now, social media got hold of this, and it didn't take long for this to be called a lynching. As a matter of fact, News One, you may remember News One, that's where the racist Roland Martin hung out. They talked about it. Here's their headline from May 3rd. 2 young black men lynched in Oklahoma by 4 whites, and it's getting no media attention. That's their story. The 2 young men involved are Ramon Smith and Jerron Moreland, who were 21 years old both, and it says they were lynched on or about the 14th of April of this year. On the 18th, police found their dismembered bodies in a pond outside of Oklahoma City. According to WJLA.com, police arrested 22-year-old Kevin Garcia Bettler, 43-year-old Johnny Shane Barker, and the 16-year-old brother of Garcia Bettler, who police say is the suspected shooter. Their mother, Crystal Rochelle Bettler, 40 years old, has also been charged with accessory after the fact. According to court records, on April 14th, Garcia Bettler drove his brother to meet the two victims because he believed his brother was going to purchase a gun from Moreland, one of the two men who were killed. The sale was arranged through Craigslist. Man, how many folks have gotten jacked up doing stuff on Craigslist? Yeah. The two parties agreed to meet in a nearby grocery store parking lot. Garcia Bettler told police that Moreland got out of a sedan and into the back seat of his van. He claims that he heard a gun rack. In other words, somebody was checking the operation of the gun's mechanism. And he told police he witnessed his brother, his 16-year-old brother, open fire, killing the two men, shot 4 rounds. Sergeant Jeremy Lewis of the Moore Police Department said, when Moreland and Smith entered the vehicle, because both of them got in, please explain to me why you would, if you're selling a gun, why are you going to get in the back? Why wouldn't you do that as open as possible? It's not illegal to sell a gun. Or is it? And if you are doing it, why are you advertising that that's what you want to do on Craigslist? That's, again, a different story. Sergeant Lewis said that Moreland and Smith entered the vehicle. The white men said they heard a gun being racked, so one of them fired 4 rounds. That's all we have. I don't know how that rises to a lynching. See, what I'm used to with a lynching is somebody's charging that black men did something that they shouldn't have done, and there's no due process. They're being charged with a crime, and before there can be even a court appearance, they rush to jail. Or you can have the case of Emmett Till, where he violated some social mores, and people came and got him and made sure that that lesson was taught not only to him but to everyone else. I don't know how this, which seems like a gun deal gone astray, could be that. Yeah, but they did that. No, you don't understand something. When you do a lynching, you don't try to hide the bodies. When you do a lynching, you leave the body out there as something that everyone can see as a sign and a demonstration to those who would be so impacted by that as to understand the message you are sending about those type of people. I don't know how this is a lynching. Complex News, which is not anyone's idea of a right-wing web organization, reported on it in this fashion.
For Complex News, I'm Natasha Martinez. In what's being described as a gun sale gone bad, a white family is being hit with a number of charges stemming from the deaths of 2 black men, Elise Smith and Jerron Moreland, whose dismembered bodies were found in an Oklahoma City pond after being missing for 4 days. 16-year-old Brett Bottler is facing second-degree murder charges in the incident, while the rest of his family is looking at accessory charges. According to the Associated Press, Bottler had arranged to meet Smith and Moreland to purchase a gun on Craigslist. After picking the men up in a van, Bottler's brother Kevin said he heard a gun cocking, and then Brett fired, killing the 2 men. The brothers then drove the van to Brett's mother's house, where they removed the bodies, covered them in tarp, then dumped them in the pond using cinder blocks. The brothers also attempted to destroy evidence of the murder in the van. Police found cleaning supplies as well as a blood splatter on the ceiling of the van and some more blood inside the vehicle. While police determined that this murder wasn't racially motivated, many people on social media have been comparing the incident to a lynching. Brett Bottler is not only facing second-degree murder charges, he's also being charged with having a gun after a juvenile conviction. Both Brett and his brother Kevin are facing charges for the desecration of a corpse and unlawful removal of a body. Bottler's mother is only facing charges of being an accessory to murder, a charge which both her boyfriend and her son Kevin are facing as well. At this time, there is no official word on why the gun sale took that horrific turn. For Complex News, I'm Natasha Martinez, and for more stories like this, keep it locked right here to Complex on YouTube.
What I can't explain is how this happens nearly a month ago and gets virtually no mention on the ABC, NBC, CBS, FNC, MSNBC, particularly in MSNBC. How does this not kind of show up, because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen them talking about it. So I can't explain that, but what I can predict, which has already occurred, is the Negro knee-jerk reaction, absent any real information. This is a lynching. No, it's not. It doesn't seem to be. For one thing, it doesn't appear that there was any racial aspect to this whatsoever, as far as the killing is concerned. How can you say that? They white. You know white folk hate black. Okay, here we go. Here we go. If you really want to make this what it should be, you got a 16-year-old who's already had a juvenile conviction walking around with a gun. That's a problem. And his family knew he had a gun. That's another problem. Why you would take that kid along on a gun sale? Okay, never mind. Nevertheless, the local authorities have charged the shooter. He's got first and second degree murder charges. And the other two guys who were there are charged with respect to how they handled, or rather mishandled, the bodies of the men who were killed. But of course, all the Negroes and the few media that are reporting it are either referring to it outright or implying that it is some type of lynching. And of course, it's proof that whites are out to exterminate blacks. But let's overlook that fact. Let's overlook the fact that blacks kill twice as many whites as the other way around, and just focus on this incident as proof of the white desire to exterminate the black man. Let's do that. I'm really not interested in that, to be honest with you, any more than I'm interested in the inevitable attempt to make this grist for the anti-gun effort. White folks, white teenagers shouldn't have guns. Okay. Now, let's be clear. It's sad when anyone is killed for no reason, and this seems to have been just that. You kill somebody without any reason for killing them. And it's sadder when folks are determined to use that death for political purposes. So, sad to get killed for no reason, sadder to use the death for political purposes, and it's time for you to get ready for what is sadder again in this case. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show. I'm going to make somebody mad. I'm going to talk about the economic doormats of the American nation, and that would be black people, the economically compromised. Because it's really time for some straight up conversation about the declining black community. And if you think the black community in this country is not in decline, then you weren't alive during the 1950s and 1960s, or you're not aware of what was going on in the 1950s and 1960s, and even before then. You're not aware of the period between the end of Reconstruction and the Civil Rights Movement, and the momentum that was put together and built by people who had been totally politically beaten down. They didn't stay there. Now, they're politically compromised and can't seem to find a way out. And they're economically compromised as well. Black people, as a group, you stink at identifying and exploiting small business opportunities in non-black communities. While you volunteer your money, almost all of it, with, oh my gosh, to non-black people who come into your community and treat it like a dollar mine. They just come in and haul out all the cash they want. Let me give you an example from an article or a blog post back from 2012. It's called A Case of the Others. Asian-owned businesses in black neighborhoods. It starts with a series of questions. Why are so many dry cleaners owned by Koreans? Why are so many nail shops owned by Thai or Vietnamese? Why are so many donut shops, convenience shops owned by Indians? Why do Asians and Asian Americans own businesses in black neighborhoods? Why are they taking our money? Why are foreigners who don't speak our language and disrespect us take our money out of our communities? Hello? A paragraph here from it. We've got to do something about these Asians coming in, opening up business, those dirty shops. They ought to go. I'll just say that right now. But we need African American business people to be able to take their places too. We've got to do something about this. Let me help you out. The questions that this person has, I think her name is Kathy Kang. At the beginning of her rant are reasonable questions. Her solution is meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. Because she is right. Asians run nail shops, beauty supply stores, restaurants, convenience stores. Folks from the Middle East, they run gas stations. Let's keep going. If you go on to, in black communities, you can find different landscaping concerns and tree services that are run by people of Hispanic origin or Latino origin. And los mexicanos son la construcción de todo el mundo, incluso en los barrios negros. Translation: the Mexicans are building the whole doggone world, including black communities. The day laborers come in to black communities just like they come into anybody else's community, build everything up, get paid, take the money, and leave. Now, let me make sure you understand this. I am not criticizing Asians. I'm not criticizing Middle Easterners. I'm not criticizing Latinos or Hispanics, however you wish to refer to them. I'm not even talking about immigrants who come in, set up shop, get fat in the black hood, and take them. I'm not complaining about them. They are basically doing capitalism. Where is the opportunity? Let me set up shop there and go for what I know. But back to what this person was saying. We need to kick these people out of our community and we need to replace them with black folk. That's the wrong thinking. That's the insular and isolated thinking that keeps you from being able to prosper. People who want to prosper aren't looking to take money from their own people. They're looking to take other people's money. Translation: where are the thriving small black businesses in Asian communities, in Latino communities, in Muslim communities, in white communities? Where are the thriving small black businesses there? Because these other people are able to set up thriving small businesses in all of these other communities. Where's black folk? Where's your businesses? Well, you are sitting up here trying to recycle a dollar in your community instead of trying to bring a dollar in from outside. Now, I'm not trying to say that there are no black businesses in these communities, but clearly, blacks have a negative trade imbalance with regard to other ethnic groups in this country. And it seems instead of making business inroads where other people live, those people who are taking dollars out of the black community, instead of going into those communities and recapturing those dollars, we want to go through this continuous buy black nonsense as though that has ever worked It doesn't. It won't. And then try to outcompete people for our own money. I'm going to compete with you. You know what that's like? That's like playing a football game where you always give the other team the ball inside your 5-yard line, and you're going to try to win the game by trying to keep them out on nothing other than goal line stands. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. I'm not worried about dollars leaving the black community. The question is, what are you doing to bring other people's dollars into the black community? Where's that effort? I'm not seeing it. Is anyone else seeing it? But instead of doing that, we're worried about how come a brother can't sit in the Starbucks. I have a better question. How come blacks aren't owning Starbucks? And not just in black communities. How come you have to be Magic Johnson in order to get a Starbucks in somebody else's community? And he doesn't even want them in anybody else's community necessarily, but I'm sure he would build them. But how come you got to be that? How come I don't have black entrepreneurs opening up a Starbucks franchise someplace where they can bring white dollars, Asian dollars, or whoever really likes coffee, bring that stuff back into the black neighborhood? How come they're not doing that? You know, it really might make sense for black folks to just go straight lumberjack. You know, I got to stack cheese. How about other people's cheese? Stop going into the black community, taking what money that's there, which is already under stress, and you're already losing that competition to other legitimate businesses. And why don't you find out what it is that people of other ethnicities and other cultures would be willing to buy from black people? And why don't you go market it there, undersell the way they undersell to us, get a market share, get them used to the idea of buying from black people. If you need to, hide the fact that you're a black business. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter whether they know you're a black business. It matters whether or not you are. It's just like back in the old days when they did the album covers. They didn't want to advertise that the people singing were black, so they put pictures of white people on the album covers. So what? The only thing that mattered was, were there sales? If there were sales, then be happy with that. But we're concerned about, well, you know what, we need respect for the sisters. I don't give a rat's behind about respect for the sisters. I give a rat's behind about respect for brothers going out there and making money. And if they're making money, you're not making it from black folks. Black folks ain't got that kind of money. We have $1.2 trillion worth of buying power. Do you recognize that as 13% of the population of the United States, you represent less than 1/10 of the GDP? You don't have any economic power. And part of the reason that is you keep trying to recycle your money instead of going out and grabbing somebody else's money, legitimately, that is. Again, it would make sense to find out what other folks like about black culture and become business humble. In other words, get your blackness out of the way so that you can make some money. Business humble enough to determine what non-blacks might buy from us, figure out how to undersell competition for those products, and get that money. That's what would make sense. But see, here's the problem with this, and this is why black people continue to be irrelevant, because they're immature. For you to do that, the Negroes are going to have to stow the white privilege and systemic racism rhetoric. You got to put that aside. It means nothing, because folks are more likely to give you their money when you're not talking smack about them. I don't want your respect. I want your cash. Because if I have your respect and don't have your cash, my situation doesn't change. If I have your cash, I may not need your respect because I can build my own world. It's really not that hard, guys. If you're humble and ambitious, you can make a whole lot of things happen in this country. All you have to do is look around you at all the people who are running businesses in your neighborhood who are both business humble and ambitious and have put a doggone economic needle into your vein and are bleeding money out of your community. They're not doing something that only they can do. Look at the diversity of cultures that are doing that to you. What makes you think you can't do that to somebody else? And that's our show. God bless. God keep you. And until next time, which I hope is next week, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.